Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Hello, and welcome to this month's P&G Alumni Network Enrichment Series. I am your webinar host, Andrea Bowens-Jones, and I'm excited to host this month's session. And our guest speaker today is Mike Prager, and we'll get to him in a little bit in terms of introductions. But before we start, I want to go through a few announcements. Are you ready? Are you ready to get this thing started?
I'm ready to roll.
All right. So now I'd love to introduce you guys, after participating in our poll, to our guest speaker today, Mr. Mike Prager. We are fortunate to have you with us this morning, so thank you for your time, first of all. Mike is the president and CEO of DeLonghi Group's North American subsidiaries, market leaders in coffee, specialty kitchen, and other home appliance categories. DeLonghi goes to market under 4 market-leading brands: DeLonghi #1 in home espresso machines, Kenwood, a world leader in food preparation products, Braun, leaders across a variety of small appliances, and NutriBullet, #1 brand in the blending category. DeLonghi is also the largest coffee machine partner to the Nestle company, including co-branded partnerships on their Nespresso brand. Mike has a diverse background spanning a broad range of premium consumer product businesses, large and mid-size of ownership structures. Prior to joining DeLonghi in early 2012, he served as president, Oregon Scientific, an award-winning specialties electronics company. This followed his work as president, The Boys Collection, a Kohlberg Cavis Roberts private equity-owned consumer gift collectible and home decor business. He also served in executive roles with the Timberland Company, a world leader in outdoor fashion. The foundation of Mike's career was built over the course of 16 years, which included 10 years with Procter & Gamble and Johnson & Johnson. Over that time, he served in a range of multifunctional roles across several divisions of the companies. Much of this time was spent in the health and beauty care business. He is a finance and marketing graduate of Denver University. We're so glad that you're with us today. And I'm going to turn it over to you so that you can get into that great content. And he's going to be speaking on the title today, helping us to learn more about mid and large range companies.
Great, thank you, Andrea. And when you read all that, it makes me feel pretty old, actually. But but that's my own issue. Now we'll get on to the content. I'm really thrilled to be here with everyone. Frankly, it's quite an honor. Like those of you on the line here, and I assume if you're taking the time to be on the line, that like me or me like you, I had an amazing 10 years with P&G. It really formed a foundation for all the things I've done after that. And the topic that we're going to talk about today is one that based on the different things you heard Andrea talk about, people ask me about every once in a while, just around the difference between working for mid-market companies, how to make them successful, and what have really been some of the keys as you make the adjustment from, amazing Fortune 25 businesses like P&G to the, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of other companies out there. So that's what I'm going to cover on today. And I'm thrilled and honored to get the chance to do that. As Andrea mentioned, I'd be glad, in fact, I'd encourage you guys to ask questions as we go. I know that that's not necessarily how this is normally done, but I wouldn't want to hear myself drone on for 50 straight minutes. So I don't know that you would. I think it's more interesting if you ask questions. So feel free, and we'll try to answer as we go as things come up. Yep. Hold on one second, folks. Okay, first a little bit of context. I'm going to share with you my experiences, my perspective over the course of a range of different years. I think it's important to understand it's one person's perspective, and there's really endless, countless shapes, sizes of situations and companies and experiences, and mine are mine. I've formed a range of different learnings and ways of doing things over the course of the different roles that were mentioned. But frankly, there's not one way to do things. There's no universal truths. And actually, a lot of the things I'll point out that I've learned or I've applied really also hold true for many different types of business situations. So I just offer that. Again, you're spending an hour here in one person's perspective. If you're able to glean some learning from that, or some things ring a bell for you, terrific. And some of you might some of these things may be things that you guys have also learned over the course of your range of different experiences. Again, I'm not going to go back over my bio, but I'm going to do a quick rewind on what Andrea was saying, just to give you the context or the lens that I'm looking through when I make the comments I'm going to make. So I had the real luck and good fortune of spending 10 amazing years with P&G and then another 6 with J&J. And it really then catapulted me into all different types of businesses. So I've been in all different parts of the consumer sector. I've been worked for businesses that were large, medium, small, entrepreneur-owned businesses. I've now worked for several entrepreneur-owned businesses. The businesses I've worked for have been based in the US. I've worked for European entrepreneurs, Asian entrepreneurs. I worked for KKR, and also have seen and experienced and participated and made decisions around a range of different business models. So the point is that there's a lot of different inputs that get me to the content I'm going to cover today. And again, there's not really one absolute way to do things. I'm going to touch on 6 different areas today that I think have been important as my teams have gone about trying to build businesses across mid cap and smaller companies. One of the first and most important things is, for those of you that might be thinking about doing the types of things that I've had the chance to experience, is figuring out if it's really right for you. So I'm going to touch on that. Identifying the path to success. It's critical that from my vantage point, before I've gotten involved, and I'd suggest before others get involved in different opportunities, to really be able to see beforehand how you can make it a success. I think the single most important area that I'll comment on relative to making the particular companies a success has been around speed and agility, and I'm going to talk about that in a little while. Certainly, the foundation of any great company and any success are the people. So I'm going to talk about considerations related to the people and the organization. I'm also going to touch on what really matters at the end of the day as you're trying to measure success. And I want to touch on the importance of business plans and what helps in consideration of business plans. Also at the end, I want to give some context on just a quick summary on some of the key things that have worked. And then also I want to comment on what some of the really important learnings and lessons from my experiences at P&G have been most important levers for me as I've gone through this pretty diverse set of experiences I've had the chance to live over the course of a bunch of years. So that's the outline, and I'm going to doggedly go through to try to get through in the about 40, 45 minutes. I think a first and really fundamental question for people as they think about the type of businesses they want to be involved in is really understanding if it's right for you. P&G people are afforded a lot of opportunity. They're accomplished. They've learned an amazing amount over the course of their careers and can do a lot of things. And so it's important, though, that for people to understand that working for mid-sized, smaller-sized companies is not necessarily for everyone. It's not a better or worse scenario. It's just very different. There's elements to it. And those of you on the line here that have had the chance to do it, or maybe you're consultants and you've worked with mid-sized companies, I think you'll really be able to relate to the point. You know, sometimes I talk to folks, I get calls, you know, fairly often on people that are considering their next career opportunity. And, you know, they ask me about, when they see my background, they ask me about working for entrepreneurial companies or private equity, you know, mid-sized companies, what have you. And sometimes I get the sense that they think because it's not 100 million stat cases, that maybe it's easier, or it's just kind of a way to wind down. You know, smaller businesses, they're not as hard as these monster mega brands that you manage in a place like P&G or other huge corporations. Well, certainly that would be a mistaken way to go in because it's far from the case. I would say one of the most important elements I try to help people understand is it's really critical that you enjoy bringing order to chaos. Because even when I've worked for larger, smaller companies, or, you know, let's say a couple billion-dollar companies, they can act like $100 million companies or $50 million companies in the way they operate. So for people to really flourish, they have to really enjoy taking things that aren't working and helping to make them work. They have to enjoy living in ambiguity, uncertainty. They have to enjoy not having the leverage that we're afforded at a place like P&G or Johnson & Johnson or Unilever, or, you know, these really mega companies. One of the most important things and attributes, I mentioned speed and agility, is that people really need to have the skill and the interest in moving fast and making decisions. And it sounds super fun. Like when I talk with people about, you know, the things that I've had the chance to do, it sounds really fun. But at the end of the day, as I explain to people, you really have to look in the mirror. Nobody can tell you if it's right for you. You have to look in the mirror and really assess if it's something that you really would like, because it is different. And again, not better or worse, but different. It's interesting. I get reminded when I talk about the difference in the company of an interview I had about 9 years ago with someone, and they worked for a big company, and we went through the whole process. And at the end of the interview, they said to me, "It sounds like it could be a good option. I'm just worried I might get a little bit bored." And we joke about it today because 9 years later, he's flourishing in our business, and we joke about that. You know, that question or comment that he made, because when you work for companies that are mid-sized or smaller companies, even if they're not 10, 50, 100 million stat cases, I can assure you, you get anything but bored. So I think the first step for folks is really, you know, figuring out if working for a mid-sized, smaller company is really something that is exciting to you. Last point I'll make is that I do, you know, there's people that call me up and we talk a lot about this, and they say they're really, really interested. And then I go see that they went to work for the next, you know, Fortune 25 company. So I think it's really important to try to figure that part of it out before you get deep involved. Second in the areas to cover is a path to success. I've got a pictures on the right. I'm not sure if any of you folks on the line have ever, have played pool or maybe played chess or games like that, where there was I've shot a little pool in my day, and I remember I was playing with a super awesome pool player, and he mentioned something to me that I've never forgotten, because I think it not just applies to pool, but applies to things like we're talking about here. And what he told me was, don't knock the first ball in until you see how you're going to win the game. I think chess players are probably the same. I'm not a good chess player, but I think they're probably the same. And the point is, you need to see your path to success. In the businesses that I've been involved in, it's been really critical for me before I got involved in them to see a really clear view of how we were going to win and how I could help make that company successful. What I found is that when I've been able to narrow down and understand 2 or 3 cornerstone levers to making that business successful, it's really provided a foundation for me. Because then what we've been able to do is just doggedly stay on those things and drive them to the hilt and revolve our work around them and keep the organization focused on them and rallied around them. Certainly we make adjustments, but it's really important. In a lot of cases, they're businesses that maybe are kind of on the brink of being successful, not being successful, to really be able to understand and see what is the path to success. Because if you can't see that, it's going to be hard to drive it there. I'll give you an example. There's one company I worked for that I ended up working as a consultant for first. They had wanted me to come work for them, and I hadn't quite seen the path for success. I didn't know if it could be successful. I ended up working for a consultant, or as a consultant for them first, and helping them in their budgeting planning process. Through that process, I was finally able to figure out if it could be successful and what that path to success was. But before I did that, I really wasn't able to, and I wasn't going to go work there. But then I was able to see it and start to build the blocks from there. So knowing what the path to success is, I think is really, really important. After you figure out, is it something I really want to do, you really need to be clear that you see a path to being successful. And that's not just in mid-sized companies, but I think in mid-sized companies, there's a lot greater potential volatility in the difference between success and not. I talked about speed and agility. To me, if you just look at maybe cultural elements that are most important, I think this one for me has been the single most important cultural element that we've been able to leverage across different businesses. I'd say especially here with DeLonghi. I've now been with DeLonghi almost 10 years. And I think this has been a cornerstone to our ability to be successful. What I've seen over time is that going too slow cripples a company. I view in my role, one of the single most, if not the single most important thing that I do is knock stuff out of the way and eliminate bottlenecks and enable our folks, our great talented team, to get things done. And especially as time has gone on and we've really built the foundational tools, that's what I do. They call me in when we need to get stuff out of the way, and I want them to do that. So we've got to be able to move quickly. And I've seen that as a really important characteristic, even to the extent of, when I see us in meetings and we have, trouble making a decision, I tell them I'm willing to own it. I can own the decision. I can make the decision if we need it. And so they don't have to necessarily feel the risk involved in that, so we can move things forward, because there's some tough decisions we're making. We're making 1,000 decisions a day in environments like this. We don't push decisions off to other people. We make them. We sit around our desks, a few of us, and we're making tons of decisions, but they're hard things to do. I also have found that it's important not to punish mistakes, because if you want a culture that's going to move fast, make decisions, people to take ownership, you have to be really careful not to then go punish decisions that end up being not the best decisions. It's also, I found important in driving this speed and agility, to really recognize courage and call out courage and call out the behaviors that move things quickly forward for us. Unique work that helps us achieve the breakthrough results that we're trying to achieve. And I would say similarly, really showing our customers, our partners, and as I mentioned above, our employees, that moving fast is going to be a cornerstone DNA of our company. And so it's really important that we exhibit it, and that our partners and especially our customers know they can count on it. And it's become a trait of ours. They know that we're going to move fast. And I'll talk about this a little bit later, but I think it creates real competitive advantage for us. When I'm trying to compete with the likes of a P&G, knowing that I can go in and make decisions quickly on the spot gives me a real advantage. Also, giving our team the empowerment to make decisions on the spot is powerful in a lot of different ways. I'm really on the lookout for bureaucracy, because process, when applied to the right things, is critical for us. However, bureaucracy is stuff that we need to tear away and watch out for. There's plenty of examples where I've seen things bogged down, and I've said, we're not doing that spreadsheet. There's no reason to do that spreadsheet. I think a really classic example of a very small point, but it was very meaningful amongst many different meaningful examples, is I remember at one point several years ago, I was in a meeting where I was with our supply chain team, our sales team, product development team, and we were going through forecasting on some very important products. And I noticed that we were sitting on one issue, and we couldn't seem to get the work done to get these forecasts submitted to the factories. And I couldn't understand what was going on, why. And then when I got about 4 or 5 questions deep, what I found out was that there was one salesperson trying to determine a forecast for one small customer, and they were holding up the work that one of our planners was trying to do. And everybody had the best interest in mind, but we were holding up an entire submission for one small piece of a forecast. And so on the spot, I asked the planner, would it help if we just make the decision right now? She said, absolutely. We made the decision, we moved on. It told a lot to the company at that point. We had a lot of people in that meeting. So little things like that about just forcing easy decisions to be made really help in companies like this. So moving quickly is important. I really believe that, the old perfection is the enemy of the good. It's definitely easy to overanalyze. It's definitely easy to bureaucratize things unnecessarily as you're building. So for us, I would say single most important trait culturally that's helped us be successful. In fact, if someone were to ask me what's one of the couple most important learnings over the course of my evolution in my career from large corporations to more modest size entrepreneurial type businesses, it's that I've learned that there's less risk in making the wrong decision than in taking too long to make a decision. Now, certainly that's not an absolute. There's some decisions that you really need to deliberate on, but at the end of the day, most of the decisions we make, the plus or minus of the right decision is much lower than the plus or minus of taking too long. So if I leave you all with one thought, that food for thought, that would be it. So here's the scenario that you often are in when you're with a mid-size or a smaller company. You're super lean. You have less people, you have less money, you have less infrastructure. You're competing against giants who are highly regarded, they're big, they're strong, they're great at what they do. You know that you need to be recognized as a leader to your consumers, to your customers, to your agencies, to your partners, and within the industry. Seems like a Rubik's Cube that would be pretty difficult to conquer. But it's definitely possible. In fact, you see it around you all the time. These smaller companies that are just able to go in and carve out really important pieces of businesses. So the question of, is it possible? Absolutely possible. So the answer is yes. Aside from the speed and agility, to me, one of the ways it's possible is through the art, what I'll call the art of effectively cutting corners. So figuring out, how do you get stuff done in a way that you are a leader and you serve as a leader to your customers, and you serve with category leadership type work, but you do it without having to spend the breadth and depth of resources and time and all of the investment that the larger companies are able to do. I wish there were a science to it, but what I found is there's not. It's a learned skill. It's an art. You figure out over time the way to get there, and as it says, cut corners, find ways to be efficient, sort out, what needs to be done from what doesn't need to be done, sort out those critical couple things that are going to make you leaders with your customers and everyone involved. So again, of the different things that I've learned, this little section is clearly, if not the most important, one of the most important. Another super, super critical element of any great company are the people that you choose as colleagues and as partners to go on the journey. The difference is, when you're with a company of 100,000 or 150,000 or 200,000 plus people versus a company of 50, 100, 200, 500, 1,000, each choice really, really matters, and each person that you bring in really needs to fit a particular role that you need. And again, it's not that bringing the right people doesn't matter in any company environment, but when you're in a smaller, tighter group that needs to do the things I just described, it's critical. One of the things that we've learned is that in many cases, I would say in most cases, it's more about the right fit than just pure technical talent or academic smarts. You really need people that fit what you're trying to build and can be true participants, ambassadors, advocates, and leaders in it. What I've found is that we really aren't doing, the proverbial rocket science, and you need technical talent. But I've also learned that people learn as they go when they've got the right DNA for what you're trying to do. You also need to understand where they're going to fit in to help you achieve what the company's trying to achieve. What we've found too over time, I think DeLonghi is a great example because I've now been here almost 10 years, is our needs have changed in people as we've evolved. I mean, early on when we were bringing people in, and you know, we had almost a third of the number that we have now here in North America, we really needed generalists that could do lots of different things, and it wasn't ideal in some regards because we lost some of the, you know, specialty and real expertise we needed in some areas, but we had people that were super agile and could move in and out of different things and could take on lots of different things. But as time went on, and I think areas like marketing and digital marketing is a great example, as time went on, we really needed specialists. So as our evolution has changed, so has the way that we've looked at the people that we're bringing in and the skills that they need to have. We also leverage outsourcing a lot, but one of the things that we found is really important about outsourcing is the partners need to reflect your company. We've made plenty of mistakes here and at other companies, you know, bringing on partners that touted themselves as the biggest and the best. They just weren't a good match for our DNA. You know, we found that companies that are most like ours, you know, often mid-size, often entrepreneurial founders, owners, that really get what we do, have really helped us the most. And I would say similarly consultants, and I imagine some of you on the line may be consultants at this point. We found consultants to be super helpful, but only when they are real experts in particular areas. You know, again, plenty of mistakes bringing in generalists that, you know, had great credentials, but they really didn't know their way around companies like ours or the specific functional areas where we needed very pinpoint and precise help. Because if you think about it, if we're going to have more generalists, we really, when we bring people in, they need to be real experts in the function and the functions that they're going to be helping on. So those are some of the learnings on the people front. And I mentioned this later, but we keep our hierarchies lean. We don't have a lot of people managing people. We try to keep our hierarchy lean, and I think that's been really critical to keeping people hands-on, involved, and moving things forward. These are some of the characteristics that I've just found have been really valuable in traits. And again, they're valuable in many, most, maybe even all company environments to some extent. But if you want to say, what have been distinctively important characteristics in these types of companies, I've found you need to be super positive. People need to be engaged, involved, empowered in taking the company where you're trying to go. They need to be independent and do things on their own. They have to work well together though, because it truly is a team effort to be able to move, you know, to move the mountains that you're trying to move with very lean resources. You've already picked up from my comments earlier, agility is critical, so people have to be able to move fast. They really need to be courageous. And honestly, in some cases, you know, we're sitting with an entrepreneur owner who is very vested in decades in the business. And you need to have courage to be able to say, we know this is what you believe and have built these beliefs over decades, but here's what you need to do. And it's a lot different than what you believe. And you need people on the team that are courageous, because as you knock barriers out of the way, they need to be able to also carry things forward. At the end of the day, when you're going to move fast like we move, people have to have good judgment. They don't have to be the smartest from academia and have the highest SAT scores. They need to have really good judgment. And they need to love making decisions and being involved in making decisions. Everybody says they want to.
Mike?
Sometimes,
Oh, I'm
yes.
sorry. We had a great
Great.
question that just came in the chat related to this topic. It is about the ease and comfort in delegating. The comment is around that most of the time in small family-owned companies, the largest barrier for them to grow is in delegation of authority. Leaders are unlikely to feel comfortable delegating decisions, even simple things like vacation planning.
Great, great, insightful question. And I'm going to assume that they're
What would you
talking about,
suggest to ease comfort
yeah,
in delegating,
I'm assuming they're
right
talking
around this
about the,
people topic that you're getting into?
thank you, Andrea. I'm assuming they're talking about the entrepreneur owners who, have trouble letting go. And what I've
Yes.
found, and it goes back to the courage point. First off, and this is no different at P&G or J&J or anywhere, you have to create trust with the owners. And I would say in a company like ours, especially from some of the different cultures, that you work in, keep in mind that these owners often have their name on the product itself. DeLonghi is a family name. So they have the name on the product themselves. First and foremost, you have to create credibility with them and trust. And honestly, part of the way that I've found to do that is being honest with them. And so what I've found is as we've created trust and credibility over time, delivered on results, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, and been willing to make some difficult comments, but then follow it up, we've earned that less hands-on from the owners that the person asking the question is asking about. So hopefully that gives some context. Andrea, do you think that gives some context on that?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for asking the question. I know I'm hard to interrupt sometimes.
It's okay. You told me I could just jump in there. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you. I mentioned results. So that question actually is a great lead in to one of the reasons that results matter the most. They're not the only thing that matter. But at the end of the day, there's lots of things you can focus on. But what really matters is results. And honestly, most of the entrepreneurs I've worked with, there's nothing that speaks louder than results. And I've worked with entrepreneurs with degrees of skepticism, about a lot of different things. But where we've really earned, and I would say DeLonghi is a fantastic example of it. Over the course of time, what's earned us the ability to do the things that we're doing, to gain the investments we've been gaining, and to really have the owners completely turn the keys over to us, has been our ability to do what we say we're going to do and deliver results. So results really matter, and I know they matter at all companies, but you're just under an amplified magnification of what you're doing in worlds where it's just a smaller universe. And I say it this way, it's not only the final result that matters. Certainly the way you do stuff matters a lot. But it's just important to keep in mind that the way you do it is not the destination. It's got to be a means to an end. You don't just do it because it looks good, or that's what a consultant told me, or that's how other companies are doing it. You do it because it gets results. And so, below I say it's not about meetings, forums, bosses, recaps, analytics, data, buzzwords, consultants. What it's about is whomever it is that owns the company, if it's private equity, if it's a public company, if it's an entrepreneur owner, whoever it is that owns it, have given you the keys to help them improve the results. When you're given those keys, regardless of the level or the function, when you're given those keys in a more modest sized company, the most important thing you can do to earn the ability to do everything else is get results and get some traction. And I found one of the really critical enablers. I talked early on about the path. So early on, you see a path, but then you need to operationalize that path and turn it into something. And so I've found that leveraging business plans, really using business plans with a purpose, has been critically valuable. And I don't mean business plans where you go away on a 2-week, leadership camp and you have the senior team develop a mission statement and you spend 3 days deciding if it's the or them or these or that. I mean a tight, concise plan that outlines how are you going to get there. It certainly needs to be the right balance of strategic, action-oriented, but it also needs to make sure it's simple and straightforward. And we really use these plans as an empowerment tool because, to the question about owners sticking their hands into things, when you can show them you have a plan, you can bring in great people, you're lean, so you need people to do stuff. You need the guardrails of plans so that people can go out and do their thing. So the plans I've found as super important guardrails for the team, and they really do guide choices. We use them to guide choices. If you read your plans and you don't feel like they're distinctive enough to guide choices, you got to write more valuable plans. What I've used over the years, a tool that we used at P&G many years ago was, many of you are probably familiar with the OGSM process of writing business plans. Maybe some of you are nodding out there. I love it. I think the OGSM tool's been a really valuable one. We try to put a little bit more focus than in the original format on actual actions, but that tool's been valuable. And we cascade it all through the company so that everybody has their own that support it. And so there's a good example of that's not bureaucracy. That's using process to get you to where you're going to. And it provides real power for our functional leaders to go do the things that need to be done and feel like they understand, what types of choices to make versus maybe things to ask about or things not to do. I'll also say that, and I don't know that I have this anywhere else in here, so I'll add it here. It's also been really helpful, sort of related, is at each company creating a currency, let's call it, that we all understand that helps measure our success. In our case here, when we really had to add more financial value to this business at DeLonghi, we used contribution margin as our common currency. We came up with a way to define it. We came up with tools to help calculate it. We deployed it through the company. We gave them privy to sensitive information that in a lot of companies I hear, that the teams are not privy to. And it's really given us a common financial dialogue and language that we use that helps bring our plans to life. So again, there's a real difference between process and bureaucracy. I've found that using plans have been really, really important and valuable for us. Here's just a bit of a laundry list of, things that have worked over the course of time. And these have been reflected through my comments earlier. Find the couple of keys that are going to drive the business and then drive them with ferocity. Really exploit how flexible your company can be with customers. If you're competing, like for us, using that as an advantage versus big competitors has truly been an advantage, and when we've gotten really good at it, we're able to have a range of employees make decisions on the spot. They know the guardrails, and the customers are really impressed at our ability to make decisions. Be known as the company that always follows up and adds value. Maybe goes a little bit with number one, but I think it stands on its own. Following up is such a basic thing, but so many people don't do it. And okay, if you're with a big, huge corporation, that's just how corporations are. We didn't really expect they'd follow up. Well, we follow up, and customers know we'll follow up. I follow up with them, and it gets to the next point. I think it's been really valuable, and it depends on the situation, but I would say we've found it valuable to have the person running the company, in this case, me, be the face of the company for customers, employees, partners, being out in front and participating and being involved, and know they have somebody to call. Know they have somebody that's willing to have hard conversations, make decisions, get people involved. We found it helpful not to overbuild. So it's frustrating to our team sometimes. They don't have the resources that they always need. But I will tell you, and I had to do this once, if you've ever gone to a company and in the first week your job was to lay off 100 people because it was overbuilt, that imprint never leaves you, right? So I've learned, for me and the companies I've been involved with, earn the resources. It doesn't mean you don't need to wisely invest to create value, for sure. But what I've found for us is being super careful about headcount and about other fixed overhead and how we've gone about things like warehouses and office space and headcount and so on. Have high standards. I mean, you guys on the phone come from, one of the best companies in the world. We know what it's like to have high standards, and you all have high personal standards. I have super high standards. And I feel really good that our companies have been able to reflect them, even though we're leaner and less resources and so on. But having said that, I think it's important in our cases to create environments that are forgiving as well, because it's a tough task what we're trying to get done in these types of companies. And I mentioned the point about flat organizations earlier. I found it to be helpful. It sort of goes with the overbuild point, but it also goes with another point, which is we don't really want managers managing a manager, managing another manager, managing another manager. We don't really want that much overlap. I sort of have this vision in my mind of a blank piece of paper, and all the people are like circles on that paper. And it's good when there's a little bit of overlap in those circles, but you want to try to cover the page the best you can with everything that needs to be done. And, I think that too much hierarchy creates a lot of the stuff, that I mentioned earlier that can get in the way. Here's my last slide, and you guys can be thinking of questions. There's so many things and foundational elements and learnings I had from my amazing time at P&G. I probably could have filled this page up many times over. So I tried to think about, while I certainly have learned things that I try to pull out and not get caught with in more mid-sized companies, there's so many foundational elements that I learned that have really helped me. And we've been able to incorporate. The value of confidence and pride. When you're in companies, especially that maybe haven't had as much success as they'd like, being able to convince them, yes, we can do it, and having the pride in the achievement of getting it done and working together and so on. We know what that's like, having come from P&G. And it's a super valuable trait as you go to build a mid-sized company. We learned at P&G to think big. We don't just walk in with a small idea. We try to think of the idea in its real end state. It's really helpful when you're trying to bring a smaller or mid-sized company along. Now, that's not saying to be it's a balance, because you need to focus on action, but you need to know the broader place that you're headed, where those guardrails take you. How to be a category leader. I was fortunate to grow up at P&G when category management, and my next point is category management plans, when doing category management plans and working with retailers around that was really coming in to be an important element of building business. That's important, but also just how to be a leader in a category. You learn that at P&G, and knowing how to be a leader really serves itself well for these types of companies. Multifunctional teams have been an element I've been lucky to be able to incorporate in all the businesses I've been in, and I learned that through a lot of great work that we did at P&G. Certainly foundationally, leveraging consumer insights to drive product development strategies and roadmaps is a foundation to the work that we did at P&G, and it's a foundation to how we've taken a company like DeLonghi North America and really built it to the multiples of size that it was before, to the amazing product plans, North American-based product plans we have today. And it's really the foundational learnings from my time at P&G, that gave me the perspective to bring those things to life. As you know, when we're at P&G, using data is really a foundational element. It's really important to the things that we've done at other companies. One of the tricks, though, is not to use it as a crutch, because at the end of the day, it's in here that makes decisions, and up here, it's not the data. And so I have found that, it's easy to make a decision because the data says it, but in your heart, there's a real derivative of, what the real right answer is. And so using data from my learnings has been really valuable, but turning it into a decision is something that I think is a bit of an art that you learn over time. Along with the idea of leveraging insights has been how to segment a category, figure out where to focus and how to win in those segments. And I want to comment on two really important organizational things. When you're at P&G, and I would add this Johnson & Johnson to probably at the greatest companies in the world at this, values and principle-based management. Just because you're in companies that move fast, put results really at a forefront, have to get things done quickly, not only does it not mean that values and principles aren't important, they become even more important. Because when people are going to move fast, they need to know what the rules are, and they need to know, as I mentioned, these guardrails. When we're at amazing companies like P&G and Johnson & Johnson and many other amazing companies around the world, you learn about incorporating values and principles into the way you run the business. And lastly, we really learn about taking care of our colleagues, developing people, developing the organization, and building plans that help people move along. We don't always have the luxury of the size of organizations to be able to build the succession planning we'd like to at more modest sized companies. But having learned how to do that at P&G has been amazingly valuable to me. So those are my thoughts. Hopefully there were some nuggets in there that were meaningful to you guys. And I really appreciate you guys listening to me for 50 minutes. And there goes my bell. I'm going to turn it over to Andrea.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. And if there's one question, we'll take one question. I know we're at the top of the hour and we have to wrap up. Please do drop it into the chat now, and I can ask it. But I do have one if there's not another one coming in from the audience as we kind of pull things together. I wanted you to speak to the point you made with that great graphic that showed the art of effectively cutting corners in there. I found that innovation happens when there are constraints on a system, whether it's resources or people or any of those things, market pressure and all those. Is there anything that you can speak about understanding your niche or just the constraints that forces innovation out? And that'll be the only question we'll be able to take at this time.
One of the things is time, and not taking an endless amount of time. I mean, I think that we've been under super time crunches to have to get things done, and I find that it's easy to fill in time, and whether you give yourself 3 months, 2 months, or 1 month doesn't necessarily dictate the quality of the answer or the quality of the innovation. And we take on lots of things. And it seems like maybe a simple, a simple answer. I could think some more about it, but honestly, Andre, I think one of the things that's pushed us is forcing things and forcing us to make choices.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Great presentation today. I enjoyed it so much and would have more questions if we had time today. But I do know we have to wrap up. So a few closing announcements before people kind of pitch off into their morning to enjoy is, one is, don't forget to kind of go out to pgalums.com. We do want to see you at the conference. You can register there. Remember that if you register, you can put in the code that I presented at the beginning of today's talk, and you'll save $150 off of it. Support the foundation. You see the email address there, up there, and partner with us as well. And look for opportunities to volunteer. Today's session was recorded, so it will be on PG Alumni Network on the YouTube channel. So you can go out there, do a replay, and listen to it, share it with your friends, and encourage others to participate as well. And lastly is, if you have questions or want to start your own alumni chapter, you want to get connected, just email us at hello@pgalums.com. Mark your calendars for October 12th, our last session before the conference. It will be a panel discussion where I'll get to talk to 3 amazing women about corporate philanthropy and the power of giving back. So today's session has been awesome. Thank you guys for tuning in to this month. Thank you, Mike, for your time. I know you're a busy man, so thank you for sharing your knowledge with it. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.